Art with Mr. Posey. Flowers in different styles. Hello and welcome back. For our last nature art project, we're going to be drawing some flowers in some different styles. We will do a realistic style, an impressionist style, or an expressive style. Or you might want to try out all of them. You can do any of these styles with any kinds of materials: paint, markers, colored pencils, or crayons. For this project, we're going to use a photo we took earlier this week and try to draw or paint it in a certain style. I'm going to look through all of my photos and try to find some close-up photos I took of things that are bright and colorful like flowers. I'll start with a realistic drawing. I'm sketching out the shapes in that gesture drawing style, trying to think how each shape interacts with the one that's next to it, and looking for the way that each shape is unique, trying to match my drawing the best that I can to the photo. A drawing like this doesn't have to be exact, but you do want to make sure you have all of the main shapes so that you can get the colors into the right places later. On a flower, I look at how the petals layer each other and overlap, and then I have my stem at the bottom. That should be enough to start my coloring. Since I'm going to go realistic with this one, I'm going to first pull out all of the colored pencils that are related colors to what I see in the photo. I see some yellows, reds, purples, and a little orange. I also have a gray for a little bit of the shadows. I'm looking closely at the photo, trying to match what I see. If there's a light yellow color, I'll use my light yellow. If there's a dark yellow color, I use the dark yellow. And if I see a shadow, I'm pressing harder or using a little bit of that gray. I blend the colors together with my white colored pencil. I'm constantly doing that when I do a colored pencil drawing. I'm laying colors in over the top of each other and then using that white to blend it all together. For this, I'll put in some outlines. But if you want it to be a bit more realistic, you can leave the outlines off. I'll go in and fix up any little things that I still see that I missed. And I have a realistic drawing of a flower. The same thing could be done with paint, as long as you try to go smooth and realistic. Impressionism is a style of art where you can see all of the marks and brush strokes. The Impressionist artists like Vincent van Gogh and Claude Monet wanted to capture things in a moment in time. Their paintings look much more rough, not quite as smooth, and they're done much more quickly as well. For my Impressionist art, I am going to start the same way by doing a nice light pencil drawing of all of my main shapes. For this drawing, I'm also going to include my background. So I'm trying to include everything that's in the photo on my paper and lay it out basically in the same way, with everything in the same position. Now, as you can see, when I start to paint this, I'm not being that careful. I want to see all of those little brush strokes and marks that let somebody know that this is a painting. At the same time, I am looking closely at the photo, and if an area looks like a lighter shade of green, I'm expressively dabbing in some brush strokes of that light green. I like to use one color and move around the paper, looking for all of the spots where that color would fit. Now I can go in with a darker green to shade in my darker spots, and a little light green for those lighter spots. For my background, I'm going to go fairly rough and fairly fast. The colors that I see in the background are browns, reddish browns, a little black, and a little tan. So as I'm painting, I'm letting each brushstroke be its own little creative thing, but I'm also looking at the photo to try to figure out which spots might be a darker brown, which might be a lighter brown, and where I might see a little of that red coming through. I can use a darker color for shadows under things. Now as I paint the flower, I'm going to start with the medium tone of red. I'm slowing down a little bit on this because it's my main focus, but I still want to see all of those brush strokes. When I paint something like a flower, I like to work with different levels of the same color. What I mean is, if it's a red flower, I'll be working with some red, a darker shade of red or purple, a lighter shade of red or pink, to get that whole range of values. Now with watercolor paint, if you want something to be white, the way that you make it white is you just leave it the color of the white paper. So as you can see on my flower, the edge of the petals is white, so I left a little open white space in that spot. I'm now going in with a darker red and a smaller brush, and I'm not thinning the paint out with water quite as much at this point. That will make it thicker and darker, and it will sit on top of all the watery paint underneath. Do you see in the photograph how the petal has a blend from dark to light? That's what I'm trying to show with all of my little brush strokes. But instead of blending it like I would with colored pencil, I'm making lots of little marks of paint. I'll go in with a really dark green for the shadows on my leaves and stems also, trying to copy what I see in the photograph. And some darker shadows on my rock and down under my rock too. You want to create a variety of values, some things that are really dark, some things that are medium, and some things that are light. Now I'm going to go in with some black as my last color. I usually save black for the end, and I'm very careful with what I do. I'm looking for spots in my photo that are the darkest, and putting a little expressive black in those areas. Under the rock was a good spot, and there's some sections of little shadows up in the background also. So I'll just do some little sketchy lines to show where all of those live. A little bit of a darker purple to get that darkest value in my flower. Do you see how I built my values from light to dark in layers? My last layers are always my darkest layers. If I'm using acrylic paint or tempera paint, my last layers are usually my lightest layers. Once again, I don't want it smooth and blendy if I'm doing it in an impressionist style, so I'm making lots of little marks so I can see all of those brush strokes. And that's my impressionist painting of a flower. Finally, I'm going to do what I would call an expressive drawing. The drawing is really just inspiring what I do. I'm being very scribbly and rough, trying to generally put in shapes and colors where they go, but not being so careful as to make everything look too perfect. I want to see all those little scribbles and lines because this is an expressive drawing, and that's what an expressive drawing shows. Even though it's very scribbly, you can still see how things in my drawing match the things in my photo. I'm trying to put in some of the stems in the back in the same spots that I see them in the photo, but at the same time giving it a little scribble here or there wherever I feel like it needs a little scribble. A little yellow as a bright spot in the back. I'll sign my name, and I have my third flower drawing, an expressive flower drawing. Maybe a little more scribblies up here. And boop, perfect. Now with your flower drawings, choose any photo that you took that's nice and colorful, choose a style, and then choose your materials. You could do any of these drawings with any style or any coloring materials. Thanks again for all of your awesome work. Come back next week for our last art projects for this school year.